Hello and welcome to Pick Up the Mic, Harvest Church's only official podcast. And doggone it, we got a great podcast for you today. At least that's my projection. We have my Bible software starting up. I hope you heard that. But not only
our
do
new
we have
intro music.
Yes, that is our. We don't have any intro music, do we? Sunshine, how come we don't have intro music?
That's really funny that you mention it, because just before we started recording, I was talking with El Guapo about one that I found yesterday that I think would be super cool. I can show you it after.
Oh, that'll be cool. And I noticed since I was away on vacation that all my posters got moved and we have a cool light thing in the middle. This is awesome. It's like there's somebody who knows what they're doing. It ain't me. Looks good.
It wasn't me. I don't know if I can say who.
Well, it's up to you. But listen, this is going to be a great show because my regular sidekick isn't here, and that's always fun. He's off on vacation, I guess, sunning himself. He's very white. He should not go in the sun. He'll like burn really fast. He's like potato, inside of potato white. That's Will. Inside of potato Will, I like to call him. From now on, that's who he is. But instead, we have someone who's trying to slowly take over the podcast. He's on every other podcast, and now he's changed seats, and that's our good friend Isaac John. Hi, Isaac. How you doing?
Hi, Mike. I'm good. I'm ready.
What do you got planned for us today here?
All right. So on this week's episode of the podcast,
I like how you said that.
Our goal is
say it like a radio guy. On this week's episode.
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it.
Say it like a game show guy. Do you ever notice that game show guys say dollars different than the rest of us?
No.
Say $10,000.
$10,000.
Now, say it in game show.
$10,000.
See, you naturally know it's the thousand. $10,000. That's how they say it. Anyway, go on. What were you saying?
This is going to be a good one.
Now you know it's like to be Will. That's why he ran away for vacation, so he wouldn't have to put up with me.
Let's tell more stories about how white he is. I don't think we covered that enough.
He is white. He's always wearing long
staring
pants.
into the middle of this light, white.
He's always wearing long pants. You know it's because there's nothing but whiteness under there. You know it. You know that his mother probably was, make sure you have sunscreen on, and he never got a tan in his life. He's always dressed in camo and... Anyway, go on.
I think one of the more important themes of this podcast is insulting the people who aren't here.
I love that.
Last week when you weren't here, we introed it as Drop the Mic Again. I told everyone we sent you out to pasture. So.
Which I don't mind. Pastor in the pasture. It's kind of...
It fits.
Double.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'll insult the people sitting here. I love... I think if you can't handle humor... it means we're not friendly enough. I mean, the more friendly you are, the more you can know where to joke without being really... I mean, do you think he really cares if we called him white? No. He's not going to say, oh, I'm not that white. He's white.
Now, I'd be offended if you heard what he said before we went on air.
Yes. If you insulted his mustache, well, okay.
It's fighting words.
Well, when you have friends, hopefully you learn. Sometimes you learn the hard way. Sometimes I learn the hard way. I got to admit, I joke around a lot, and sometimes someone's feelings hurt. And I don't know it.
You know, fun fact, I didn't realize. So I think that's a guy thing. Would you agree with that, Sunshine? It's a guy thing to like
Bust
insult each other.
And,
Is it?
It's more of a guy thing, yeah. Girls are more easily offended.
Yeah.
I didn't learn that until I was in like my mid to late 20s. Where it was like people will sometimes pick on you because they're friends with you. But as my sister says, I'm sensitive. So
Well, that's really amazing because... Though many people don't know this about you,
oh boy, here we go.
You have a very quick wit, and you could have been just tearing people up the whole time and really enjoying yourself.
Wasted opportunities.
No fun for you. I do think it has to do with friendship, though.
Yeah, you're right.
Now I had one person, a friend of mine who I like very much, who I won't make fun of, told me that I was wrong, and gave me an explanation why, and sent me a couple of quotes of someone else who said no, it's not a good thing, but. I just tend to think that that's not realistic. Having my experience growing up with brothers, I just had lunch with my brother, Mark, and we had so much fun, and I picked on him a great deal, and and his son was there, and we really enjoy each other, and I get picked on, but there is a meanness. If there's a meanness about it, that's what I mean with people. This doesn't come across as mean. Sometimes I will admit I take too many risks with people I don't know that well.
I think as someone who didn't know how to interpret some of those things, the way I conceptualize it is the things that I can't change that you think are awful. Those are the things you don't want to joke about.
It's exactly what my mother told me. And so every once in a while there'll be someone like weight. Every once in a while I'll tell a joke about someone's weight, but I have to feel like I'm in a very safe environment. I tell a lot of jokes about my own weight. Their height. You got to be careful. You got to know without question. Being bald, you got to generalize it because,
it's not off the table. It's just
it's not off the table is right because some people are they're just funny.
Unless it's a woman.
Like I walked up to bald woman. I don't touch that one.
Or
Never.
A woman with a mustache.
A woman with a mustache, that's just a regular Italian lady. I have no problem with that. But
they're fair game.
I just picked on the entire nation of Italy right there.
Well, just one gender.
There'll be one, but there's Italian women without mustaches. They're going, he ain't talking about me, so they're not going to be insulted. So who's going to be insulted? The ones with mustaches? Like, hey, what's wrong with this? Like Sophia out there is going to say, he's not talking about me.
Oh, now you named her.
Sophia doesn't have a mustache. She doesn't. I don't know who she is. I made her up in my mind. So I forgot the funny thing I was going to say, so it's not going to be funny, so I can't say it. Oh, yeah, I ran into Pastor Kevin, and he was standing with my buddy Ron Drosky, and I looked at their two...
One of my stories is about Ron. He's going to be double mentioned on this episode.
I saw these two shining heads, and the first thing came to my mind, I said... Now, I've known Kevin a long time, and I didn't insult them, really. I just said, hey, look, it's an 8-ball and cue ball. And maybe they cried. I don't want... But you're right. Making fun of things people can't change, you got to be very careful. And I admit, I'm not always the most careful, and so I got to be careful-ler. Careful-ler!
You can insult your friends. You just can't pick their nose.
Well, you know what? Here's what Jordan Peterson said about this subject, and I'd like to hear him talk more because I only heard a little vignette and he didn't say more, but he said when a bunch of men join a sports team, they will, as they get to know each other in the locker room or on the field, they will begin to insult each other. And he says, but the one that can't take the insult, he says they're going to tend to pull away from because they'll feel like he's not safe. He's not safe.
The one that can't take the joke is not safe.
He's not safe. He's not emotionally safe. And they do it subconsciously. Or he may not be physically safe. I'm like, if you got a short guy you're getting drunk with, not that we get drunk around here, but I learned in the past, short guy syndrome is, for a certain percentage of short guys, very real. And when they get drunk, they want to fight. Not all of them. It's a small percent. Because they're small people.
Really short temper.
They have a short temper.
The closest I ever got.
We can do this all day.
Maybe
you help them up on the stool, they want to fight you.
Probably the second closest I ever got to getting in a fight was because I called a kid short. After he insulted me much more significantly, I just made a passing comment about his shortness, and he tried to fight me.
Yes.
But I had the arm reach.
Did you put your hand on his head? He was like, I'm going to get you. Hey, no, there's some short guys who will tear you up because they're vicious and they don't care because they're going to prove to you. But in any case, what's on
Back
the show
to the
today?
introduction. This is going to be a good episode.
I've had a lot of pent up in me. It's been 2 weeks since I've sat here.
So we're going to start with Bible talk, right? We're going to go through your upcoming sermon, which will be your past sermon by the time
when you hear
airs.
this, we'll have traveled through time.
Talking about the dishonest manager in Luke 15, I think.
16.
Oh yeah, yes.
You're talking about the Catholic Bible now, Luke. Just kidding.
He's wired today, everybody.
I'm in trouble with the Italians. I'm in trouble with the Catholics.
After
repeat myself.
After our time in the Bible, where I'm gonna interview you a little bit. So
That's
we'll get
right.
some of your story. Now we
That's
have we get snippets of your story often in the podcast and sermons and things like that. So I'm not going to give you as much time as most of our guests for your story,
Sure.
because I want to also ask you questions. So specific questions.
Shoot anything
so
you
those
want.
will blend together. And then we'll play a little game. I got a game ready for you.
No way.
Yeah, and to see how you do. But before we start that, I had two things I wanted to mention. The first was the confession about sending you out to pasture last week.
Oh, I think you're absolved.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And the second was the Ron Drosky story, because I figured the first thing could be a mini game. Try to make Mike laugh, which is not hard. So I only needed one
So
story.
we don't
I'm
know
so
if Ron
confident.
listens to this.
No, but
So you can say
he's
any
been mentioned.
doggone thing you want.
Okay, so he's
Okay.
bald, first of all. No, I'm just kidding.
No, he is.
That's true, yeah. That wasn't a joke, but that wasn't where I was headed.
Yes. But he
So-
looks good bald. Let's just say it. All right.
The reason I was thinking of Ron's story is because Joe's episode of the podcast just aired, and Will dubbed him the crying pastor. I've been usurped as the crying pastor, and now it's Joe.
Yeah.
And he told, like, I was really impressed with his episode. I really enjoyed it. But it made me think of this story with Ron that after I preached, I don't know, sometime recently I preached at Harvest, and Ron came up to me and he said to me, he just thanked me for my message and said it was moving. He said, "You almost made me cry." Now Ron is a pretty manly man. When he talks to you, you think you're talking to a military guy, whether he was or not. You can. He just got that air, and so he said, "You almost made me cry." And I said, "Well, if Pastor Joe had been here, you would have definitely cried, because that guy's a ball baby." And Ron's response was, he said, "Well, you kind of expect it from you." That's what he said to me. And so he just kind of said it in passing, and I gave him that look. I was like, "What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Do tell." And he said, and I quote, "Well, you're a little feminine, you know." And then he continues on.
That's fighting words.
He just goes on. It was just like a matter of fact to him. You
And
know,
just
you're
how tall is
you're
he?
a little feminine.
He's not as tall as you either, is he? Well, Drosky, we're calling you out now, you short little bald guy. Come here and say that.
Well, interestingly, so I have poor self-esteem as it is. So mission accomplished. I got Mike to laugh. And I
That's
told that story
hilarious.
to Bill. I'm going to play you the message that my buddy Bill sent back to me after I told him that story. Let's see how this goes. Hold on. So this was after sharing that story with a close friend of mine who's
Which
willing
ended
to
with
insult me.
with the punchline, you're kind of
You're a little
of course.
feminine.
You're gay.
So I've starred that message just to listen to every once in a while. Bill giggling for 30 seconds to conclude with that.
That
But
is awesome.
Interestingly, so within a few weeks of Ron telling me this story, at my other job, my previous job, I met a mother, and her son was going to be new to our school. I should have been more cryptic about this. Anyhow, she told me how excited she was to send her son to my
But we
school.
have no idea who she was. She also brought 2 girls and a dog
And their names are.
and a chicken.
But
We don't know who she is.
She said to me, "I'm really excited for him to attend this school because he doesn't do well with masculine men, and you're not
Oh
a
my
very
gosh.
masculine man."
How are you handling this?
And I went like this, like, why? Apparently I give off this air or something. I don't know. And so I gave her the big-eyed look, and she kind of backpedaled a little bit. She's like, "Well, you don't have this big beard." And I was like, I don't know that that's what you were talking about.
No.
So
What did you think?
So it was a strange, that was about a month's worth of time, strange month.
That is real. How do you respond to that? I mean,
I
how do you-
don't know. I just
Okay.
brush it off, I guess.
Okay, well, I don't know if we'll ever get to the subject because this is more interesting. than me. So the first,
Sunshine, you have a take on this?
No, I'm just entertained. This is great.
No,
I
come
mean, I
on.
never would have.
you think of
That's
him as,
horrible that they said.
But
well, forget that they said it. What would you
neither
say?
of them, as far as I can tell, were meant to be insults.
What do you
It's
mean?
just-
What do you? Is he kind of a little?
No.
feminine?
No.
Well,
What, because he's nice?
maybe what they're saying is that you show that you're not overbearing and mean.
Yeah.
I sure hope. Thanks for making a positive spin on that. I thought this was
Hey,
going somewhere else.
Listen. I actually think that's a compliment because I come across, I think, as
Masculine.
no, dogmatic and sometimes too forceful, and people feel like they don't feel safe, and I never want that to happen. I never do that on purpose. In fact, if I feel like I'm doing it, I try to pull back. So it's nice that you're giving that other vibe. I mean,
I'm glad you think so.
look, we sent some people to do evangelism at the Pride Parade. We should have sent you.
Missed opportunity.
No, in all seriousness,
I have had many conversations with that crowd, and they all turn out really well. In fact, I sat with one and cried together.
my son is excellent at that too. I wonder if my son gives off a feminine vibe. Nick,
Just say it.
he has friends who struggle with same-sex attraction, and they're very comfortable with him. But he's not, I mean, as far as I know, attracted the same way. It's funny, when I was a kid, I was a crybaby, an outright crybaby. I remember a good bit of my 4th year of life, grown-ups telling me to stop crying. Strangers, anyone, just stop crying, kid. I whined and cried about everything.
When you were 4.
But then when I was 5 and 6 and 7, I was very sensitive. Very sensitive. And so you grow up, I don't know. I maybe that I swung the other way. Not like you do. Because my mom would tell me, I would run to see my mother crying, and she told me, because I was a mama's boy, she told me, you better stop crying every time someone makes fun of you. You need to learn to laugh at yourself. So no matter how embarrassed I felt in the moment, I got in the habit of laughing. And then when I started getting in the habit, I stopped being as embarrassed. Every once in a while, everyone gets embarrassed, but I assume people are joking until they don't stop. Then, okay, you're not joking. You weren't just talking about my mother in the abstract.
I don't think my mother ever tried to teach me that lesson, but my brother did. And stop being such a crybaby, and then he'd hang me by my underwear on a doorknob.
Yeah, that's not the same. That's not the same as my mom. She's giving me wisdom. Says you've got to learn to laugh at yourself, and that got through. Anyway, let's get into the Bible. I do. Hey, do you still like Bill? The guy who laughed at you?
He is one of my best friends.
Did it bother you that he laughed?
No, it was exactly what I needed to hear in the moment. I knew that he would enjoy it, and that's why I shared it with you.
I think that's what Jordan Peterson was getting at. You can feel safe with a person if you can laugh at each other's weaknesses, if you know they care about you, and it bonds you together. And I think men especially, we don't mostly want to sit around saying how much we love each other. It makes us feel like... Well, like you are.
A little feminine. Yeah, I think it was Bill and Sean and Will that actually taught me that lesson practically. I was like, these guys actually like me.
They're just playing with me here. So there was a rich man, Luke 16:1. Now this is a difficult one. So I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to ask Isaac, why is it difficult? There was a rich man who had a manager, and this manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. So we're dealing with a guy who's hired out someone else to handle his business, which is what smart rich men do. If you think smart rich men handle all their own business, they don't get real rich that way. They do make the big decisions, but they isolate which decisions are mine. They give away all the rest. Well, and he found out this guy's wasting his stuff. And when he called him, he said to him, "What is this I hear about you? Give an accounting of your management, for you can no longer be manager." Very interesting, I think, here is that there's a time gap. He makes an appointment, apparently, as we'll see, and he fires him at the same time. He says, "You're fired, but I still need to know what exactly all my accounts are." And the manager said to himself, "What shall I do, since my master is taking my management away from me?" So it hasn't really been done yet. It's in the process of being done. That's why I think he's making an appointment with him. He says, I'm not strong enough to dig. Or maybe he met with him, but the word hasn't got out yet that he's fired. You have a week to collect your stuff. I don't know. He says, "I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do, for when I'm removed from the management, people will welcome me into their homes." Why would they want to be welcomed into their own homes, Isaac? Most employees don't say, "I need someone to welcome me into their home." Can you give us a little historical, cultural?
If he's about to be jobless and homeless, but I think in terms of hospitality, this means friendship. So if he's not welcomed in anyone's home, he's got no
right? And also,
No one that accepts
on
it.
top of that, if you're very wealthy, then often your employees lived with you. You would accommodate them. I'm sure it wasn't nice accommodations. If you go to there are places still to be found in America, in most cities that are old enough, where you'll have a house with a small house behind it, and the small house behind it is for the help servants. And what a great job just to be. I'd like to be the pool boy if I wasn't married, because then you can swim and hang out, and you don't have to worry. Just get some leaves out of the pool. Okay. And he summoned each of his master's debtors, and he began saying to them, first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly, write 50. Why quickly? Because he's out of a job. Either he's about to be fired or he has been fired, and the other guy doesn't know it yet. And then he said to another, how much do you owe? He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill, write 80. And his master praised the unrighteous manager because he acted shrewdly. That's the story. And we're going to stop right there for a moment, because this is a great parable and that Jesus does all the application for us. But what are the elements that make this difficult for people?
Well, the praise for his shrewdness, we didn't get into the details that are coming, but Jesus seems to recommend this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Or attitude.
Oh, he does. And why is that difficult?
Because it seems like he's saying to be dishonest. It seems, it seems.
You're good and sneaky. Be sneaky.
Yeah, and even the word shrewd makes me think of that's what the ESV calls the serpent in Genesis 3. I was just looking at this the other day. Almost every other time it's used in the Old Testament, it's used like in Proverbs as prudent, so like a positive spin on it.
Wise. But
that word shrewd is harsh. Like why would this be a good thing?
Well, shrewd can be good.
Mm-hmm.
A very shrewd. I'll give you an example that's very up to date. Trump just said that he is going to, some headlines say, supply weapons to the Ukraine, but he is not. And part for two reasons. One, he's talked about the fact that Zelensky never pays him anything. So we're always sending him stuff. We get nothing for it. Second, that Zelensky is foolish in the way he deals with his situation. So, and perhaps third also, because he knows a good bit of the country doesn't want to just giving things to Ukraine anymore. And fourth, he said himself that America shouldn't be the one who comes in to be the savior of Europe. So he's not giving him weapons. You heard it here first, and it's weeks after it happened now that you hear this, because this happened a few days ago. No, what he did was he went to NATO the week before, and in those meetings let them know, you're the ones, I'm not leaving NATO, but you guys are the ones who've got to step up. America's always paying the bills. So then what he did was he made a deal with wealthy nations in Europe and said, you can buy these weapons from us and you can give them to them. So I thought that was shrewd, and not in a bad way, but that's shrewdness. What he did, and by that he cut the baby in half, as they say. He found the way through.
It's like a cute practical wisdom.
Yeah, he didn't give anything directly to Zelensky. He didn't put America in debt. In fact, America's going to make the money back for the stuff. While he's strengthening the hand of the Europeans, he's saying you're going to have some skin in this game, and they're the ones supplying them. Russia can't even say we gave them to them. I thought that was a pretty smart move. So that's shrewdness, and shrewdness though can be done, and this honestly or dishonestly. This guy's dishonest, but it's where's the shrewdness in it? Well, he's obviously getting all his living off his master. We're going to assume he lives with him, and which would not be unusual for a very wealthy man in the ancient Near East, because they didn't have cars or they could drive a few miles away. You had to live near the boss, and even in quarters nearby. So he said, I'm not going to have a house when I lose my job. But I know other rich people. Maybe I can get a job with them. Why would they give me a job? Well, I'm going to make them some
This
money.
behavior right here.
I'm going to make them some money, and I don't have any money, so I'm going to spend his. And maybe he even had the authority to do it. So then he's praised by his manager. You think his manager let him keep his job? It's not real life, so it's hard to speculate on what the implication is.
I don't know. His issue was wasting his possessions in verse 1.
Yeah, and he just wasted them
Yeah,
more.
he wasted some more.
So maybe he praised his shrewdness,
Kicked him out the door.
but still didn't give him his job back. It doesn't really matter because that's the story ends here, and it's fiction. It's a parable that Jesus is telling. But why the story? Then he says this: "For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light." Fascinating application. He's saying the reason I told you this story is so that you can see when one sinner hires another sinner, that sinner thinks about the future. But then you have sons of light has to refer to faithful Jews, and we can extend that knowing where the trajectory of Jesus' ministry to us, faithful followers of Christ. But for now, at least faithful Jews, God's faithful people. He said, the sons of light don't think in this age in relation to their own. Relation to their own what? I think it's I don't know. I'm not going to question the Greek too much because I'm not a Greek
ESV
expert.
supplies generation. I was thinking people, like.
Yes. So because it's I'm going to remind myself by looking this up. Yes, it's plural, but it's also reflexive, which means if it were singular, it'd be the people this age are more shrewd in relation to themselves. Right? Right. So that's plural too.
Yeah.
But what it's saying is it's reflexive. It goes
reflects
back to
on
yourself.
them. Yeah.
So is it talking about the age, or is it talking about themselves? Their own is a personal pronoun. So the people this age are shrewd in relationship to themselves. But the fact that he mentions this age, people in the time I'm in are smart enough to think through their own future. But he's comparing it with the sons of light, which means he's insulting his crowd. He's insulting the apostles. I mean, not a mean insult. It's an honest comparison. Maybe they shouldn't be offended. He's like, you guys don't think ahead as well as
the sinners
do. In this little story I told you, sinners think about the future. Now, in their own way. So what does that tell you about the rest of what he's going to teach? I'm going to jump to the conclusion, and you can test this or disagree on anything you want. It won't bother me. That whatever he's going to talk about, he's trying to motivate faithful people to be more interested in their own future planning for their own benefit. But he's talking within the Christian realm. He's not talking about the lost. He's talking about the saved. So this isn't about how evil people murder people and you shouldn't murder people. He's not saying that. He's like, look, evil people are smart enough to think about using their resources or other people's resources to ensure their future. Are you doing that?
Well, so part of my confusion, first of all, ESV in verse 8 doesn't say age, but it's got a footnote there for it says for the sons of this world, but it mentions the age. So I never even thought of it as like a temporal thing, like thinking towards the future. But then also it seems really and strangely, honestly, specific at the end of verse 13. You cannot serve God and money. I know we haven't gotten there yet, but it seems like it's hyper focused on just the use of money. That's why this passage just continually confuses me.
Well, and realizing that if you were writing a sermon on it, you'd have known that word money really is a reference to, it's a word that is more easily used for wealth.
Mammon.
Wealth. So, and it does say eon. This eon of this eon are more shrewd than relationship to their own. So, and then he gives an application. But the application is itself difficult because how do you do it? He says, I say to you, make friends for yourself by means of the wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they will receive you into their eternal dwellings.
Which at first flush sounds like getting rich from sinning. You want to talk to that? Wealth from unrighteousness.
Well, right. So the mammon, again, is being used here of unrighteousness. Decay. I'm going to look it up just to make sure I'm right. Yeah, it's just simple unrighteousness. So I don't think it means you should go out and deal drugs and then fund evangelism. I don't think it's saying that.
It's like the reverse Mars Hill where they burned all their idols and stuff when was it Mars Hill? Became Christians in Acts. It's
no,
like actually sell those and
enough.
make money.
Yes, you're thinking of that. I think the Philippians. Wasn't it the Philippians who did that?
Maybe.
Burn their magic books. I can't remember. But but he's using the term wealth of unrighteousness, and I'm 89% sure this is what he's saying, and give myself 11% out if there's a greater scholar who can help me. But I think he's referring back to the age. The sinners are shrewd in the age, and he's going to compare heaven and earth. You have a comparison between eternal dwellings, and this guy wants to be received into the homes, temporary homes. He's using the wealth of unrighteousness or the wealth of his age so that he can have a home in this age. What he's saying is you use the same wealth, the wealth that the unrighteous people own, the wealth that sinners use.
Well, yeah, I was thinking so unrighteous sounds like sinful. Is it possible there to treat that as like the way we use the word secular?
Yes.
It's more neutral than...
It's genitive, which means it's a possessive, by the way. I'm saying genitive because I know he's got more language under his belt than I do, so I can throw that out. Genitive means it's a possessive.
Wealth of unrighteousness, yeah.
Right, so it's not unrighteous. That's like secular wealth, or let's say
non-righteous.
Filthy lucre, I think is one. It's you can't buy God with human money. Why? There you see the sacred and the profane come together, because this is just the stuff of earth used to exchange as an exchange for other stuff of earth, stuff that's fading away in a lost, sinful world. It's the way sinners do business. It's not holy. You can't even use it in the temple, right? In the temple, you have to change the money to temple money, and I don't think there's a law about that in the Bible, but that's the tradition. That's why there were money changers, right? The people would come and they'd have to offer money, or they'd have to buy an animal to sacrifice. If you don't own 2 doves, but you have to sacrifice 2 doves, you would buy them, and the people selling you the sacred
Roman
doves.
money to get Jewish money to get the animal.
No, to get temple money.
Sorry. Yes,
so
temple
the way they would look at it is you're taking your filthy lucre and exchanging it for holy lucre. Your filthy money for holy money. Your common money. Maybe common is a better word for holy. It's just like back in the old days, you can't wear that to church. Those are your farming clothes. Go put on your Sunday best. I really think that's all it is the wealth of unrighteousness. He's saying the money you use isn't holy. It's not good for holy things. But then he turns and contrasts that with you can use it to make friends who, when you get to heaven, will let you stay in their place, will receive you to eternal dwellings, eternal homes, if you will. So we have one guy who's using that money to get into earthly homes. Jesus seems to be saying you can use the same money to get into eternal homes. And notice he says the unrighteous wealth when it fails. When does unrighteous wealth fail?
When it can no longer buy anything, like in God's kingdom.
So when the kingdom comes, and there's another time when it more personally will fail for you.
When you run out of it.
Or you
spend it.
How about more finality?
Die. When
you die, it's not going to help you, right? So he's looking beyond this age. The other guy is in this age. These people understand you can use this money to make friends and have a place to stay. And now he's saying, now I want you religious people to figure out that you can use the same money so you can have a place to stay when money's no good at all, which is still shocking.
Yeah. doesn't really clarify it for me too much.
Yeah, so
we're buying hotel rooms in heaven right now?
We're making friends. It says make friends for yourself. The goal is make friends. That's what he says to do. That's application. So you have to make friends that will be in heaven using money. It still leaves a lot of pieces to connect, doesn't it? How do you make friends using money that will be in heaven? Hey, you're not going to heaven.
Show up at the bar with a
Here's
wad of cash.
$1,000. Would you be my friend if you were in heaven? Yeah. Gee, I hope you get to heaven because now we're friends. That would be a bad interpretation because it wouldn't fit with, whatever Christ wants us to do, he wants righteousness out of us. So think about it for a minute, and I think it makes more sense than we think in a very practical way.
Don't be stingy with the gospel.
I wouldn't spiritualize it yet.
Well, I was thinking,
how did Jesus be able to afford to travel with his 12 dudes and them not work? And still they made a living. They still ate.
Luke points us specifically to women who supported him financially.
There were faithful women who were wealthy who supported their band financially. Now, so they took their money, their filthy lucre, they bought food for their friends, while their friends, one of them being Jesus, brought the gospel to people who then became saved eternally. One of the signs that you're saved is that you take care of the workers. This was codified in the law of Moses that you were supposed to take up money and take care of the Levites, but it went deeper than that. You had to treat a prophet with honor if you were wise, and they weren't even priests. And the Bible says, share all good things with those who share the word with you. So in another place it says there are those who get their living off the gospel. Well, they get their living off the gospel from who? There's no heaven corporation sending out checks. The people they minister to will show that they received a greater treasure by giving that person a lesser treasure so that he can live and eat and those sorts of things. So yeah, can money be better spent than paying for Jesus and the 12 to preach the gospel for 3 years? Can you think of a better use of your money? No. Well, I was gonna get a lifetime membership to the Starbucks mug club or whatever. I was gonna buy some new shoes. I was gonna get this cool new iPhone, or I could use it to pay Jesus to eat. Now, when I'm dead,
every time he touches someone, heals them,
and he heals everywhere he goes. So I'm paying for his travels. I'm paying, they have to rent a mule. Okay, I'll pay for the mule. That really happened. One guy supplied the mule that Jesus rode in on. Well, that cost that guy something. He owned the mule, and the dinner prepared for him on the Last Supper. He ahead of time there was someone prepared to present the place and the materials. So these people are investing in him so he could do ministry. So when you die, when do you think which one of those affects eternity? your super duper skinny boy decaf triple foam Starbucks Frappuccino, or I paid for Jesus to preach the gospel. Which one is going to affect someone's eternal home? And when you make it that simple, all of a sudden it opens your eyes a little bit. It says, well, wait a minute. I have a friend who needs to hear the gospel. How could that cost you money?
Maybe you make a meal, share a meal together, and
Yeah, and you bring them into your home.
Yeah.
Him into your home. I just made him plural. Got to be careful. It's sneaking in my brain. You bring him into your home, and you spend you don't charge him. It's this costs this much, and then I did the work. So I think you owe me a little bit here. And
just set the tip jar out.
And I took a couple hours off of work to be here, so I think you owe me. No, you don't do those things if you want to reach someone for the gospel. If you take someone to lunch because you want to preach the gospel, pay. If you bring them to your home, pay. Well, my friend is on the other side of the world. Who should buy the plane ticket? You. Buy it and go. If someone else says, you know what, I know you don't have the money and I know you want to go see that friend and you're going to preach the gospel, I'll buy your ticket. He can do that too. And he can invest. And you might say, well, I want to give a party for all my friends from high school and they don't know the Lord, but we're ending high school and I want them all to come over, and you don't have the money because you're a high schooler. Well, you could always make a different plan, or your dad or someone else can say, that's worth my money. I'll pay for everything. So they're taking the mammon that's going to become useless the day the Lord returns or you die, that could be spent on something else, and they're spending it on the gospel. And that's, I think, what he's getting at. But then you can expand that to the word wealth can get bigger than just, it's what is your wealth? Your health is your wealth. Your time is your wealth. Your dwellings are your wealth. All that you own. And then you can even see the generosity itself can have an eternal impact. You find a Christian who is in need, and it could be a physical need or an encouragement need. And so for that, you spend money to meet that need. You need a vacation. I know, but I'm working hard. I know, but you're stressed out. I got a camp. It's over here, and my wife and I have bought you these passes to the local amusement center. Take your kids and go. Is that eternal? Sure, because you're now teaching this other person that you love him or her in Christ, if they're Christians. Or maybe they're not. It could be an evangelistic move. If they're Christians, you're saying, I love you. I'm building you up. I'm going to take away Satan out of your brain, who's constantly telling you that God doesn't love you. I'm teaching you God does love you, and I'm going to be the means, and you're going to give thanks to Him, and you'll be more generous in the future with other people. Does that have an eternal value? Sure, it does. In ways we understand, not necessarily. But you are definitely going to be the friend in heaven who welcomes that guy. And, he helped me along my journey to get here. So you can use all your resources, or as much as you can of your resources, and I guess all, really, with eternity in mind, or not. Were you going to ask
something? That was going to be my question. If he's addressing the disciples here, by extension, let's say all Christians, does this mean everything short of spending your money on something sinful falls under this category?
It really is a matter of investing in other people. Now, taking care of yourself is a first necessity. Because otherwise then you become needy and someone has to take care of you. And it's just, Paul says it outright. He says, let him who steals steal no longer, but work with his hands so he can give to others in need. And he's skipping a step, and he's paying for his own way too, and he's not a burden to the church. So you got to pay for yourself, and you're setting an example. I mean, living. Well, why does Isaac's shirts always have holes in them. Well, he only wants to spend on eternal things.
Usually just stained.
I think you can overthink this thing. There are arguments probably. Well, he's also showing that he's a slob and he doesn't respect the norms of the people around him, and that's not loving, so maybe he should buy a better shirt. Well, how good of a shirt? Well, if he really wants to show respect, he's going to buy a $500 shirt. You can sit and argue these things till you're nuts, but you're free in Christ. I don't think that's the big point here. The big point is how are you thinking? Shrewdly or not shrewdly? Strategically or not strategically? And you don't have to make a law, because a law would say everybody does it the same way. And no, you're under grace. You do it the way that makes sense to you. But think it through. This guy, he could do the other thing. He could have said, well, I'm just broke. I'm going to beg. I hate begging. I don't want to beg. Or I'm going to beg that guy. Or I'm going to say I'm sorry. Or I'm going to steal. He didn't do any of those things. He thought
he was too proud to beg.
Too proud to beg. So ain't too proud to beg. Now, baby. By the way, that song by the Temptations, if you ever meet someone who ain't too proud to beg, do not marry that person. Just some advice. Relationally and financially, it's not good. Ain't too proud to beg. The woman has left him. He's now become pathetic. Anyway.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So, verse 9, the end of verse 9, when he concludes with, so that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. Is it like, should we just not read into that too much when he says they may receive you into eternal dwellings? What's happening with these friends that he's made that they're welcoming people into heaven's houses?
Yeah. One thing, if I get your question, parable, you can't push too hard on the details of a parable, but Jesus is using the parable to make his point.
And he's lining it up with the previous mention of earthly dwellings.
This guy needed a house. So he's not saying that you're not allowed into heaven unless you can find a guy who'll give you a room, right? He's not saying that they have to die before you so that they're there before you get there. That's not his point at all. His point is there's a magic thing you can do.
There's something more important than being invited into an earthly home.
I don't think he's saying that either. I think he's saying when you can use the same wealth of this world and parlay it to heavenly friends who will share their love with you and their wealth with you, whatever heaven's help. This guy took the wealth of this world and parlayed it into a place to stay and a job. He didn't get much. It's going to fail. He's going to die, and that's all, and that's it. You can take the same money and get a better payoff. So he's contrasting by the age thing, the kingdom and this world, the kingdom to come and this world. And I am very confident that that's what he's doing because of what he says next. Because in 10, 11, 12, and 13, we just have this pummeling of principles that are much more, they hit you more like waves on the beach, knocking you over, than the whole parable did if you just dwell on them. He goes to verse 10, he says, he who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful in much. Now, in this parable, or in his teaching about the wealth of unrighteousness, what's the very little thing?
Money.
Money. It's all you have. All you own is called a very little thing. And if you're faithful with that on earth, you'd be faithful if you had a lot. And you can analogically reduce that. So if you give a guy $1 and he's generous with $1 and faithful, he'll be generous with $100. But he's pushing that, and he's not saying it's not true there, but he's pushing the principle all the way to heaven. And he's saying he who is unrighteous with a very little is also unrighteous in much, which is showing you that the way you use your wealth on earth is a test. The way you use your personal property, your land, the things you call yours, your money, is a test of your faithfulness. It shows, it's a revealer of your faithfulness.
Makes me think of Piper's "Don't Waste Your Life."
Yes. Yes, where the famous shells on the beach,
Mm-hmm.
where he says, do you know the shells on the beach thing, Sunshine? He says, there's no greater sin that a Christian can do in retirement than spend all his money on an RV, get a bumper sticker that says we're wasting our children's retirement, so they can go to Florida and collect shells for 10 years. He says, because you're about to meet Jesus in the last 10 years of your life. Instead of serving the Lord, what are you going to show him for what you did with the treasure he gave you?
Here are my
Lord,
shells.
here are my shells.
I've heard you talk about it
Yes.
in sermons before. I didn't know it was from Piper, though.
Yes, it's a very famous Piper illustration that I guess I take for granted. I think people know where it came from, and so now I'm plagiarizing
That's yours.
Pope John. But the next verse, it's not going to go a different direction. It keeps going this direction, but harder. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, again, that earthly wealth, who will entrust the true to you? So he's saying that there is a wealth that's not of this world. And if you're not faithful with what's in this world, why would God give you that? So verse 10 says, when you have a little, it's going to show your heart, how faithful you are. And that little can be a little bit, or it can be everything you own, because it's all little compared to heaven. And then he says, if you have not been faithful in earthly wealth, making us know what that little is, who will entrust you with true riches? What's the difference? Why the word true? And he doesn't even have the word riches, just the true. He's obviously riches is a fine translation, because he's contrasting the words unrighteous wealth with true wealth, right? That's the word has to come next. What's the difference then between true and unrighteous?
The stuff, the wealth of this world is, I don't know, a shadow. It's
well said. He says it right there, when it fails, which means the stuff of heaven doesn't fail.
insert weekly rant about prosperity gospel here.
Yes, you really should. The prosperity gospel is so devilish. And I know it sounds good because the people who preach it preach the gospel of Jesus Christ too. And I'm happy they do, and some get saved. But they immediately tie it to giving them money. They say, if you give me money, God's going to give you money.
Well, you can even see that as a conclusion that they would come to from this passage. So invest your wealth for the age to come by giving it to me.
Yeah, they do that. And in a way, they could be right if they are getting on a plane flying to another country, or if it helps them expand their ministry. But if it just makes their house bigger, buys them another jet, makes them wealthier and wealthier. And then
That
the
will
promise backwards, though, they don't promise heavenly wealth. They say that's a given. They promise earthly wealth. So then you begin using your heavenly wealth to get earthly wealth to get more earthly wealth, and call that God's blessing. And it's an insult to God. They say, well, if you sow, God will sow to you. They're right. From this, they're right. But he's promising you not on earth, but in heaven. And
where it's true.
And the opposite's true too, though. This is what they miss. They're implying that if you don't sow to them, you don't give them money, you're not getting money. And that's wrong.
Yeah.
When you're unfaithful, God, I've many times been stingy with my money, and God still fed me that day. And there are a lot of stingy people who are very wealthy. God still gives them stuff. God is good like that. And they're missing the contrast between heaven and earth. There is no guarantee that you will pile up earthly wealth. It's not a law that you have to spend your money to get this in order to be righteous. It's like a piece of litmus paper.
Well, it's a test to see whether or not you're faithful with what God has given you.
It shows who you really are.
Yeah.
It shows who you really are. and gives you the chance to sin or not sin, not to earn salvation, but to show if you're saved.
Are you faithful in very little?
If you're faithful, that's an internal thing. And you'll handle your stuff a certain way. And yes, you can grow in this kind of faithfulness. I don't think it's talking about saving faith in that sense. It's talking about wise use of funds for the Lord. Yeah. You can grow in that. You can grow in understanding and grow in grace and grow in generosity and grow in faithfulness. And yeah, so it doesn't matter how much you have. Are you faithful with all of it is the issue. And if you have $1 million or you have $100, both of them are very small amounts. They are. They're small to compare to forever because it's going to fail. And then he says, so he's saying that the way you use, in verse 11, if you've been faithful with the use of the unrighteous wealth, if you haven't been, who will entrust true riches? That if you are faithful with the use of unrighteous wealth, the exchange rate is out of this world for you. You're going to cash in with something that's true wealth. And that goes along with Jesus constantly saying parables like, you are faithful with 3 minas, I'm putting you over 3 cities. And you sit there and go,
that's not a good exchange rate.
I mean, yeah, really. Talk about minimum wage. I invested 3 minas, got you back 3 minas, and now I get 3 cities. But yeah, he's saying, I'm going to give you real wealth. And that's how you get it. And he doesn't say you shouldn't have your self-interest in mind. You should want it. Not in a greedy, petty way, like I have to have more than my neighbor, but because of the joy. Because what you're doing is you're populating heaven with friends through evangelism or encouragement, which leads to more. How's that self-centered? Somehow it is, because you're blessed by it, but it's not selfishness. Then he goes, he hits us even harder. He says, and if you have not been faithful the use of that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? And I think this is the final uppercut, right? He's given us a combination, a jab, a shot, and then he comes to the uppercut. He's going to knock you down if you're not paying attention here. It builds on each one. Those 3 go together. The last verse is a summary, and it's an ultimate summary of the points he's making. But 10, 11, and 12 build. He who's faithful in little is faithful in much. Who's unrighteous in little is unrighteous in much. Okay, so it's a test for me. Okay, good. Therefore, if you prove to be unfaithful, no one's going to give you true riches. What? It's more than a test. It shows the result. And then 12, and if you've not been faithful, and therefore I don't get a true riches, it says, with that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? What is that which is another's? What is that?
Is it because all wealth comes from God? Like it's God's wealth?
Think through the parable.
Well, it's his master's
right.
money. Or the rich man's money.
It's a rich man's money that he's using. He doesn't even have his own house. So then, that being the case in your life, then what is called that which is another's?
Everything.
Everything I call mine. Everything I call mine is not mine. That's what he's saying. But in the kingdom to come, for those who are faithful, he will give you that which you can keep.
Whoa.
If you have not been faithful in the use of that which is another, who will give you that which is your own? Again, it's very strong. Your wealth is his wealth. You are the manager of another man's stuff, and you should have his purposes in mind. He is not saying be dishonest like that guy. He's saying think ahead like that guy. The guy said, I have access to someone else's wealth. I can use it to guarantee my retirement. And he says, that guy's smarter than you people are. You're living self-indulgent lives, short-term thinking, not even realizing that you have the opportunity to take someone else's wealth and parlay it into heavenly wealth in your future. And he's saying, don't do that. And
To come back to something I was thinking about with Pastor Joe's episode, he ends with a challenge to the audience, and one of the things he said is, if you're married men, your wife is a gift from God.
That's right.
And I know, well, at least in my mind, I tend to think of this passage as material things and money, but I'm thinking when you just said it's another man's, well, not another man, my wife belongs to God. She was a gift given to me.
Right.
How am I going to use what he has given me wisely? How am I going to care for her
in a way that gives
his own?
In a way that gives you a return in heaven. And notice this doesn't depend on the quality of the wife. Not, it's not a comment on your wife, my wife, or anybody's wife. We're talking, honey, if you're listening, we're talking in the abstract. Okay, you could have a wife like a perfect Christian, does everything right wife, like mine, or you could have a shrew, someone who just gives you trouble, criticizes you all the time, doesn't build you up, fights about you going to church too much, or anywhere in between. She could be very stable. She could be unstable. She could be emotionally healthy. She could be emotionally unhealthy. She could be physically healthy, physically unhealthy. She can be helpful or unhelpful. If she's a gift to me, because I get the opportunity to love her like Christ loved the church, which is sanctifies me. But also, how does that add to friends in heaven? I don't think we can always see the connections. One thing is you get kids and you get to raise them, and your love for your wife will help raise them correctly. Second, you have the world watching you,
Yeah.
and you can teach others to do right and do good. There was a time period in my own life where two families very close to my kids, then they were at an impressionable age, two, quote, Christian families fell apart. One was a youth pastor very close to me, and his wife, and they're kin to me. The other is a very good friend of mine and his wife, who is kin to me. So they're not only all Christians, but they're family, and they have kids and they're cousins, and all of a sudden, one of them gets a divorce because one misbehaves. Then all of a sudden, another one gets a divorce because it's much more complicated, but they get a divorce. And there's so much difficulty in the social fabric surrounding my children. And they feel it, right? It's hard. And I feel it. It's very stressful for all of us. And they're very close to us, very close, both these families. And all the sorrow of what they did just emanates out like pain. And my kids were definitely looking at their parents saying, is the world a stable place? Yeah. These are our Christian world. These are the people we see, who we visit, who we vacation with, who we hang out with. And they just fell apart. What are you going to do? And there was no doubt what I was going to do, but you start to wonder, does everything I think is stable? And then shortly after that, another couple who is not as close, but well-loved and known as long, they fell apart too. So how can I love my wife and my wife love me in a way? Well, we said that for me, it was like, come hell or high water, I'm not leaving this woman. I can see the pain. Not that I ever thought of it, honey. Never thought of it. But if it was going to come up, I didn't know it was going to happen with these people either. It wasn't going to happen. And my kids were going to have an example of that so that the world made sense to them. And they would, because one of the things that I've seen in all three of those families, now 20 years have gone by in all three, their kids struggle with faith. Yeah. And they're all adults. Some I don't even think are Christians. And they seem to be professing as little kids, but you never know. They struggle with faith.
I think one of the most important lessons I've ever learned about marriage came from me being a kid, watching some adults that I was related to have a marital fight, and it was a big one. And the one spouse said to the other, well, do you just want to be done? Do you want to leave? And the other was like, that's not even a thing to me. It's not even a question in my mind. And in that moment, I had so much respect and a bit of understanding of what it takes to have a Christian marriage.
So your faith We don't know what would have happened in the hypothetical world, but your faith was on the line in a small sense there, or at least part of it, if they acted wrong. Definitely the kids of people who break up, I'm not saying, and I say this because I realize that there's Christians who've been divorced and they're putting their life back together. If one or the other was responsible for the sin and has repented and the marriage is gone, they wonder, what about me? I'm not saying you're left in the cold. I'm not saying there's no hope. All I'm saying is I know me continuing to make up my mind to love my wife pays off in eternity, because now my kids are raising Christian kids. And if the only people they reach in the whole world are their own kids, which is unlikely, they're reaching others too, I'm still putting friends in heaven. So all things are seen in light of eternity. Why should I always love my wife like Christ loved the church? Because of eternity. And when I fail, which all of us do, why should she stick with me and respect me? Because of eternity. And then he ends it with this summary. No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve God and wealth. Now, don't push on that principle the wrong way. He's not saying you couldn't have two bosses and like them both. Otherwise, you couldn't like both your parents. What he's saying is if you have two masters pulling in the opposite direction, if one is English and one is French, if one is Palestinian and one, these are ancient rivalries. If one's Palestinian and one's Israeli, and they're both pulling you each way, you're going to pick a side. And he is saying here that you will pick the side of the stuff of earth or the stuff of heaven. And this is why the prosperity gospel is so evil. It encourages people to think they're doing God's work and blessed by God if they love the stuff of earth instead of loving the stuff of heaven. You can't do both at the same time. And this, therefore, shows a God that is the God of all people, and that's love of the stuff of earth. I don't want to reduce it to just money. Call it wealth. Stuff of earth is a term I got from a Rich Mullins song, but I think it works here. It's more than your money. It's your wealth. It's your camels, your goats, your tents, whatever they had in the Old Testament. Paul says in Romans 1 that what man's sin is he worships the created instead of the creator. You worship the creature. You worship idols. You worship things that are made. This is what Jesus is saying. Every single person in the world, besides whatever religion, false religion they're raised in, has another God they have to deal with, and that's the stuff of earth. Even their religion falls into that category, right? Even their Hinduism is a subset of the mammon of unrighteousness because it's something they feel like they own. Your little Buddha statues, your little practices, these are things that you do, but they're stuff of earth. There's nothing heavenly about them. And you're going to serve earth or you're going to serve heaven. And it's one or the other. And there's nothing in the middle. And verse 14, and the Pharisees who were lovers of money were listening to all these things and scoffing at them. They didn't even get mad. They made fun of them. Anyway, that's the text that I preached on in the future. I hope it came out well. I don't know because I haven't done it yet, but now it's in the past. So any final comments on that old text or anything from you, Sunshine? All right, give me some money.
Being in the Word. That was good.
Yep. So, okay, we finished that. So,
you ready to move on to the next
now that you're
segment?
in Will's chair, what else we got?
All right, so this is going to be the question and answer time, but you get to start with a short, just a few minute overview of your life.
Oh my gosh.
Wrap up 61 years?
In how many minutes? How many sentences?
You got 3 minutes.
How many sentences?
42.
42.
No, one for each year, 61 sentences. No, that's too much.
Born of a very young couple, the second child. My mom was young, like 18 when she had my brother, and a year and a half later me. And that's why they used to do it. She's from California. He's from Altoona, Pennsylvania. They met in Alaska. What she was doing there is a story that's too long for my 3 minutes.
There's already stories.
And what he was doing there is he joined the Army, and the Army will send you to odd places. And two young people met each other in the heat of passion. They ended up married and pregnant. I'm not sure of the order, but I'm not going to worry about that. We're all here. And then, so I was born in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, because the Army brought my dad back to Pennsylvania in the eastern part of the state for a little while. And then I was raised in the South at Fort Benning, Georgia, Tampa, Florida, and Fort McClellan, Alabama. And that gets me all the way up to senior high. My last year of high school, I spent in Philadelphia. That was my only year that I can remember in Pennsylvania. I know I spent one before that, but I was too little to remember.
Quick question. Moving around all the time, you look on it favorably or unfavorably?
Both. Definitely both. Definitely both. So that's not a quick question because there's a lot behind the answer. So I'm going to let it go. You can ask it again if you want to know.
Right in to Ask the Pastors if you want to follow up on some of these.
Yes, definitely both. It has advantages and disadvantages. Yes, you sidetracked my brain.
So sorry.
So mom was Catholic, both sides, Mexican and Italian parents, and very Catholic. Both of those are. It doesn't mean they go to church. It means when they're born, the Pope owns them as one of his child, and they get that, and they never leave. And my dad's side, believe it or not, his father's German, his mother of unknown descent, something white, and but both sides very Catholic. I'd like to think my mother was English, or grandmother was English, but it seems more Irish. But we're not really sure of her heritage. But his was definitely German. Most Germans are Lutheran, but he was from a portion of Germany that was Catholic. So all Catholic, but besides being baptized Catholic, and besides a couple of months where my father decided that we had to earn our communion, older than all the other kids, and then we didn't go to church anymore. There was no churching for me. So I left home at 17 from Texas, which wasn't even included in places I lived at 17. There's a story behind what I was doing in Texas, but that's where my dad and stepmother were. And I left Texas after a month and went to live in Pennsylvania because I had a girlfriend there and a friend who with an irresponsible mother who let us just hang out there.
You had a girlfriend before you left Texas in Pennsylvania?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A couple of them, unfortunately. I wasn't a good person. So I wanted to go back to see her, and I wanted to see I live with my buddy, and got kicked out of the buddy's house because her irresponsible mom is also unstable, and lived in a barn from my girlfriend. At my girlfriend's house, I lived in a barn outside their house.
Which you've been accused of many times.
Yeah. And then I was politely and responsibly not kicked out. I was given a deadline. You need to be out of here by a certain date because they were more responsible people, but you can't stay in our barn. And so I ended up in South Jersey because I had an aunt and uncle who had moved there just for the purpose of legalized gambling, coming to New Jersey. It was before it was everywhere. And that led me to a used bookstore where I found a Bible, and a Bible which I couldn't understand, but I thought this might be interesting because I was into anything, astrology, anything. I didn't care. I wasn't that deep into anything. And I couldn't read it, couldn't understand it. So then I was hanging out with a woman and a guy all night long, partying, and she had a Bible under her bed. She wasn't a Christian, but she had a Good News for Modern Man or something really easy. And I said, I like this. She said, you can have it. So I read it, and I realized it was too easy. But a hunger for me had come out of nowhere. So I would take my Bible to work in Atlantic City on the boardwalk. We work all night very often. And I would sometimes take it out and read it. I'd be stoned and not know what I was reading. And my manager, who also became my girlfriend, told me, you cannot read the Bible stoned. It's against the rules. And I didn't care. About a year later, she said, if you want to be a Christian, you got to go to this. And she had a piece of paper that said there was a festival in Lancaster, Pennsylvania called Creation in 1983. And so we went. And from then on, her and I both gave our lives to Christ. And nothing's been the same.
That was awesome.
That's as fast as I can go.
Wow, that was really good.
Was it? It's probably boring. It's probably very boring because there's nothing but
for this all and this of you and this and this and this. Have that preconception that Mike is a sanitized pastor. There you go.
I left out all the good stuff. I didn't tell a single story.
You know, I was thinking about I think it's John Calvin's story. I read it in a Piper biography. He was going to some some place in Geneva or something, and there was a literal skirmish, a battle happening on the road that he couldn't get through, so he had to go south, and he ended up getting his call to whatever ministry he was. I'm forgetting all the details, but Piper's conclusion was sometimes God will move armies to change one person's story. I was thinking there's a lot of moving pieces in your story, even just
there are a lot of moving pieces.
But he brought you here.
Yeah. So and how I got here is a whole nother story. There's a lot between then and now, and then and getting here. So every life is busy with many stories left untold. People are more interesting than they think they are. That's why I think everyone should consider when they get married their spouse an endless story that you've yet to get to know, and that includes you, Sunshine. But you're only on the front end. You got a long way to go, and you still won't get there. Anyway, that's it.
He hit the bullet points.
Okay, we're
Ask
done now.
questions.
Let's go.
That was awesome, and hopefully we'll hear more on other podcasts and sermons and things. But my agenda was elsewhere here. Just a quick not follow-up question, but a question that I'm curious about. What's your degree in? I'm talking about I don't know if you like people knowing, your doctoral degree. What was your dissertation on?
I didn't get to do a dissertation because it's not an academic.
So you're a fraud.
I am a fraud. Unfortunately. Actually, I asked if I could do a dissertation, and they said no. It's a professional. So to get doctor on your name, you have to have what is called, and I say this, you may know this, but for everyone who doesn't worry about these things, you have to have something called a terminal degree. And it sounds like death, but it's not. All a terminal degree means is you've come to the end of the training from the acceptable knowledge or the equivalent of the acceptable knowledge on this subject. So you're a doctor. It doesn't mean there's not more to learn, but you're going to specialize and go in another direction, or you can expand outwards. But you've learned enough to be called a professional on this subject. And most of them are PhDs. And but they don't have to be PhDs. And those are academic, where you do research in a new way, taking all the research that's there and studying it on the subject you want, and then you come up with something new. Most dissertations, all of them have to be published somewhere. Normally they're sitting in a library and no one ever reads them, the library where the person graduated. There are other terminal degrees, and they're called professional degrees. When you call your medical doctor a doctor, he's a doctor. And but his is not academic, it is professional. In other words, you do it so you can practice it. Now, he's often smarter than the PhD, because PhDs are often stupid.
It's easy to know stuff. It's hard to...
Right. Now, a lot of people made fun of Jill Biden because she wanted to be called Dr. Biden. But there was nothing wrong with her asking to be called Dr. Biden, except for I think there's some hubris or pride, as we say, in needing a title. But it was a legitimate title. She got a PhD in education, or I think it was a PhD. She could have gotten something, a professional degree in it, and that's a lot of work. Even if she didn't learn much, or her dissertation was stupid. So I've explained what those are. So I got a Doctor of Ministry rather than a PhD, or there's another one. Is it THM, a terminal degree? It doesn't matter. Only because a PhD, you have to give you have to give so much mentally, academically, that I'd have to quit my job to get one, I think. There are smarter people than me who get them without quitting their job, but I'm not that guy. So I took a Doctor of Ministry, which is a terminal degree from a seminary. And I can be called doctor, but, it's just a title. And I don't, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. So what it's in church revitalization. Because I have a great interest in why do churches die, and how can we keep them alive? How can we keep them alive through the generations? How can you get And for me, it's mostly not even planting healthy churches, even though we're involved in doing that. It's taking churches that exist and waking them back up. That's very interesting to me. It may not, it may make me boring in parties, but that interests me. So I went to the Southern Seminary because they had this discipline called church revitalization. And I read just about every book on church revitalization. That's contemporary, bunch of them. How helpful they were, I don't know, but at least I know what is known, and that's why they call it a terminal degree. I generally know a canon of knowledge on the subject that most people know. And what I wrote on for they call it a project. I said I wanted to write a dissertation so I didn't have to do any project, just research, because they said you could. They said this is an option for those who want to write. And then when I asked my advisor or overseer or whatever they call the PhD, who's the Lord over you, can I do that? He said, no, don't do that. I'm like, okay, you said I could. So what you have to do is some sort of project by academic standards. And then you have to go what they call defend your project. It's like defending a dissertation. The only difference is that the nature of the paper you produce is different. One is based on practical, you have to do something, right? So what I did was I took a theological point from the New Testament, and I put forth the thesis that the best way to preach the gospel, no, not the best way, that the Bible puts forth a way of preaching the gospel that causes us to culturally bridge to people and then direct them to Christ and bring them in. So I had to do a project to test it. And then there's these hoops you got to jump through. You got to make sure it's ethical, and you got to get it signed off on. And then you have to get participants, and you got to submit the tests you're going to use. And we actually did something and got it started. And the people who started it with me were ready to keep going, but then their lives changed. But we did a bridging example to how to do evangelism in Indiana. And I got a team together, and I trained them, and I said, okay, we're going to have to come up with a way to reach college students, bridging to where they're at. And I justified the whole thing through Jesus talking to the woman at the well mostly, but I then used other examples in the Bible too, where he did not begin with theology, he began with water. She came to get water. He said, I'd like some water. And then he moved that over to spiritual water. And then he began a conversation. And when you think about her background, they were culturally from completely different cultures. He didn't undo all that. He didn't even try. He dealt with it as it came up. He simply bridged over. He ignored the cultural problems and jumped over and got her into the conversation. As she brought him up, and she did, she brought up one cultural issue, and she said, your people worship on this mountain, our worship on that mountain, and who's right? That seemed to be a drive before you buy kind of question, though, right? And so he answered it. So apologetics falls in there too. How much apologetics should you do? No more than you have to help a person walk along. So it was on that, and the team I came up with came up with the plan of doing pancakes. They figured you could bridge to college students by feeding them and doing some sort of pancake outreach to college students. And we got it going, and we did the project, but it was supposed to go on, and it didn't, because two of the main people who were part of it moved. One of them was the guy who called you gay on the phone, by the way. So maybe he wasn't ready. Anyway, he's calling people gay everywhere. But but so that dissertation was written, published. I sent a copy to my dad, and I don't know what I did with the others. I don't know if I sent one to my mom or not, if she was alive when I graduated. No, she was not alive. I got a copy somewhere, and there's a copy in the library of Southern Seminary, and no one will ever read it. No one. Because that's how it works. I defended it with two professors. They said stamp of approval.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And now you're Dr. Mike.
Now
as everyone knows.
Yes, as everyone calls me, Dr. Mike. But
well, that segues us into the next section pretty well.
By the way, if you want this, for those listening, he's decided to use the second half of the show to query me. That's his choice, because he's sitting in Will's chair, and
this is the power seat.
It's the power seat, so he can do that. And So I want you to know you can cut these shorter if you want. They don't have to be long answers. You can say, no, I don't want to talk about that. Go this way. I'm just, it's easy for a self-conscious man to get self-conscious about talking about himself. I don't want to say things you don't want to talk about. So,
note to the editing team. Now I'm going to ask you some questions, and that'll lead into our game eventually. You can help me filter through how long's too long for some of these questions. But I don't know if you remember when my maternal grandmother died.
I do.
At her funeral, I made the slideshow video that included some things that she said at the end.
Okay, I don't remember that, but I remember the ceremony.
And that was because I was in this phase of thinking. Now, don't draw any direct correlation before I go on. Thinking of my grandparents and thinking they're gonna die one day.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna remember what their voice is like, and I'm not gonna know all the stories they have to tell. So I started interviewing. My grandmother was alive.
Very
my
smart.
wife's grandmother was alive. So
Very
I started
smart.
interviewing them, and then I had the recorded words of my grandmother. And one of the things I made sure to ask all the people that I interviewed was, to address your future generation, or your generations below you, and the future of your family and things like that. So that was kind of the feel that I was going for, not because you're going to die, but because there might never be a chance, or someone may never take advantage of the opportunity to ask you questions that you're thinking right now about your church and things like that. So a perfect segue from your dissertation, or from your doctoral degree, is how do we keep Harvest Church relevant?
That is perfect. And I would say the answer, by the way, these are on the fly. He gave me a chance to study ahead of time, but I said I'd rather not. And so I hope that doesn't rip off the audience to things I would have thought of. One, you keep the gospel and the content of Orthodox theology up front. Number one. But then everything else is up for grabs. Now there's something called the regular. What's the next word? That's an adjective. What's the noun of worship? The regular
Rhythms?
No, this is a theological term. There's a principle of doing worship that is agreed upon by most Reformed people, and Reformed people doesn't mean Calvinistic. It means anyone who came out of the Reformation, so even Methodists, that they agree that this is what goes into a church service, or being a church. The regulatory principle, that's what it is, I'm pretty sure. And it's things like you gather weekly. You have leadership that preaches the word of God regularly, that you remember the two ordinances in a regular and consistent fashion. You pray and you preach and you sing and meet, right? It's stuff all churches should do. And it'll keep you from becoming nuts. Like, we're just going to have church services where we only sing, as some people say. Well, that would be against the regulatory principle. You're not going to pray. You're not going to preach. You're not going to fellowship. We're just going to sing. We're just going to do skits. You can't do that. But a lot of churches die that are Orthodox because nothing changes within them. And, for example, John MacArthur just died, and he's Orthodox to the end. What's going to happen in his church, I don't know, because he fought hard to keep them culturally irrelevant. Though he wouldn't say that, and his followers will comment and say how stupid I am for saying it, because if you say anything about John MacArthur except he is next to God, then they think you don't recognize that he's a Christian or something. They want to kill you. But he was always Orthodox, always preached the gospel, so the preaching was fine, but he always had to wear a suit. Everyone had to wear a suit, and I'm not against wearing suits. I would say, though, that I would ask the question, does the Bible say you must wear a suit? Well, it doesn't say you must wear a suit, but if you're honoring God, how can you honor God if you don't wear your best? Okay, thank you. That's an argument that could work in certain cultures. It didn't work in Jesus' culture because he did not do his teachings in his best suit. He didn't seem to have a lot of clothes. In fact, when he died, there seemed to be at least one set that we know of that people fought over, so it must have been a halfway decent shirt.
And he wasn't even wearing it.
And he wasn't wearing it. And he preached in his regular clothes to people in their regular clothes. And so I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm saying it's a bygone era. People don't dress up for anything these days. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying it's neutral. I wish people would dress up, but for something, not church necessarily. But if you make dressing up a standard, you're literally leaving a lot of people out who just don't dress up. They don't know how to tie a tie. They don't own a suit. You yourself do not own a suit. And you doggone grew up in the church. Am I right?
I just bought my first suit before coming here.
Yes.
Because I got hired here.
That's right.
You told me I'm doing a wedding suit.
If you're doing weddings, it's not socially appropriate to dress differently than everybody else. And so you should wear whatever is appropriate for that wedding. And that's going to be still suits. The only thing we dress up for now is weddings. I was going to say weddings and funerals, but around here
just did a funeral this week and I was the only one dressed up.
I know. I still wear a suit, but I'm telling you, around here it is like hee-haw.
A lot of t-shirts and boots.
You do. You see suspenders and flannels in the wintertime. You're like, your loved one died. Yeah, so, okay, forget it.
He would have wanted me to wear this.
Yeah. I had one funeral I did where the guy wore a t-shirt and I was told, please wear a black t-shirt. I'm like, okay, what the heck?
My people.
So culturally, when you walk into his church, hopefully they've upgraded some. I haven't been there since the 90s. I'd visited. But it used to be you walked into 1950. The hymns are the same. The way they sing them the same. The order of service is the same. The way they dress is the same. And so what could happen is once you lose the draw of the big guy, if the next guy doesn't draw the same, all of a sudden, people are going to say they're going to go to other churches because they were putting up. A lot of people put up with that stuff because they think they have to. It's just true. There's many churches where people go to this day who wouldn't go to Harvest because they know Harvest is certainly of the devil because our pastor doesn't wear a suit and we don't sing hymns. But they're bored to death in their churches and they're lying if they say they're not. They're lying if they say they're not. I've been in those churches. I'm not something I haven't seen. Before I was a pastor, I got to many churches, and since as a pastor, fewer, but I've been in them. The guys don't want to sing the songs. They lean on the thing. They're wishing the song was over that they could sit down. Their
Sunday morning routine is arduous to them.
Yeah, it's painful. Yeah. They want their kids to go to other churches sometimes when they stop going to church altogether. Mm-hmm. They have grown kids, and the kids won't come to their church. And why don't they go to their church? Because they never liked it anyway. And you put these barriers to the gospel that are cultural. I would say it like this.
And that's what you talked about with the Samaritan woman.
Well, the Samaritan, he made bridges that were cultural.
Yeah,
now, what he bridged her to is what we're talking about. Once she joins the community of faith. But when you join the community of faith in the first century, it was mostly homes. Once they left the temple area, there was this period of time where the church was a big temple explosion of thousands of people. And who knows? You're not going to reproduce that. It was definitely a mega church meeting in the temple and then house to house at the same time. So there's some sort of, I don't know how they scheduled everything. They had to do a lot of teaching. But then oppression came and they were kicked out of the area. So they began meeting in homes, no doubt in their regular clothes, eating meals every single time. And so it wouldn't be there'd be no cultural barriers at all, except for that a Samaritan would go to have, well, in her case, actually, Philip went back to Samaria and preached and lots got saved. So probably in her own town they started meeting. And so even culturally, she was eating the same food. She was meeting the same people, speaking with the same accent. But had she joined with the Jews, it would have been a little different culturally. But the difficulty in putting cultural barriers is it can be seen in buying a house around here. There are very few new houses built around here. So most people are buying something that's been around. And very often people stay in the same home for a very long time. This is not true in most of the places, in any of the places I've ever lived except here, because I've never lived rural till I came here. In suburban places, in other places, people are always moving. And not true here. People stay till they die. And when they die, sometimes they hang on there. You walk into their house and you said, this is a nice, beautiful contemporary house in 1968. And the very first thing that the people who move in want to do, if they're young, is change everything.
Rip that stuff out. Yep.
They rip out the carpet. I can't believe
I
this
got my
fixture.
wood paneling still on our walls, but
Yes,
it's not the forever plan.
It's not going to do.
We had to paint it first.
That's right. It's not going to do. We got it. You're painting paneling, which is disgusting, but it's in the way. It's easier than drywall for now, right? And I've done that too. You get in and you want to update the sink. You want the entire kitchen looks archaic. This is not going to work for us. Why is everything orange and shag? And if you walk into those houses, there's no tube TVs anymore. They all have the flat screens. They all have internet. But then you go to those same people's church, and it's like you just walked into 1950s. They sit in pews. Why? Because they're supposed to have pews. They sing out of books. There's nothing sacred about the hymns. This gets you in trouble all the time. We had somebody yelling at us for not being nice enough about the doxology on one of the comments. The doxology is nothing wrong with the doxology at all. There's something wrong with saying you have to sing the doxology. Mm-hmm. That's what's wrong.
And you can't sing it while laughing. And we learned.
Yes, well, I do, because I have no apology for what we said or did, because that is the problem. People get stuck on their religion, and they love their religion more than they love their God. Or they think their religion is loving their God. And so, yeah, they love it more. What if you sang it with a rock band? Well, you can't do that. It's entertainment. It's the way I like music. You're not supposed to do music the way you like it. You're supposed to do it for God. They don't realize that if you're singing an Augustus Toplady song, now I am happy all the day, that was a contemporary song.
The guy's last name is Toplady?
Yes, Augustus Toplady. And I don't think it's one of the best hymns in the world. I don't even think it's a good hymn. I don't like the chorus, and now I'm happy all the day. I do like the phraseology of at the cross where I first saw the light. That's good, but it's not that great of a song. But it's thought of, it must be great, it's in the hymnal. And we should sing it, and it's better than these doggone praise choruses they sing. Why? Why? Why is it better?
Because it's old.
Because it's in the hymnal. So what you have is this resistance to cultural change because you think it's religious. If you look in your church,
we got them fired up.
What in your church is biblically necessary? Let's go the other way. What's not biblically necessary? One, pulpit. You take the pulpit out of most churches, they'll kill you. That represents the Word of God, blah, 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 blah. Pews, don't need them. Don't need them. A table that says, in remembrance of me. Stained glass. Meeting in the morning. You can meet in the afternoon. You can meet in the evening.
Sunday.
Dressing up. Using non-alcoholic wine for communion. None of those are biblical. None of those things they're not unbiblical, but they're not biblical either. They're not necessary, and you could do the regulatory principle without any of those things. But we make them into church, so church becomes irrelevant. Second thing is, so you got to stay culturally up to date.
So the first was centrality of the gospel. Second is...
And good theology. You got to hold to the Bible is true. I think if you look at our statement of faith at Harvest, it leaves a lot unanswered that people want answers to. And it's not that we won't answer those questions, but we don't make them the entryway. In other words, there are churches where you have to believe in the pre-trib rapture to become a member. They're fewer and fewer, but they're out there. And it doesn't matter what you believe about the rapture here, as long as you believe the Lord's coming back. That's it. That's in our statement of faith. The Lord's coming back. Does it not matter? Yeah, it matters a lot. But to church membership, if you start to over-define what everyone has to believe, or they can't get in. But if you don't have the minimum, on the other hand, you're in trouble. The Bible is inerrant, infallible. The declaration of the cross has to be regular. I would say the way you preach has to constantly, this is a second thing, you have to uphold the preaching of the Word of God as powerful. You have to believe in it. There's always forces in every age, it's not new, that say the preaching is the problem. You need messages. You need to, they always want to mess with the preaching, take it away, shorten it. No, you need the preaching of the Word of God collectively so that we as a people are having an experience with God's Word through His chosen instrument, the Bible, and the Holy Spirit coming through the voice of a man that He has chosen to lead from within. So you have to have preaching. Stay devoted to preaching the cross at all things. Next, you got to always focus on risk. If the church stops risking, it will die. When it starts to say, we got to protect the amount of money we have in the bank. Why? Well, because what if we didn't have it in the bank and something happens? Well, then you don't have it. What happens? I don't know. You don't have to be reckless, but you've got to take risks because you're not going to grow the size of your church and reach new people if you don't take risks. And risks cost money. There's no such thing as ministry without money. And normally when people don't want to take risks, it's all about the money. They don't want to change the money, or they don't want to change the service.
Well, it's related to what you said about the traditional things. If you're not willing to risk removing some of those.
One of the hardest things, Isaac, is you can have a church that has hit its peak, say 200 people, and healthy as all get out. Years later, it's got 60 people, 50 people, 90 people, and they're all older. And they want to know, what can we do to get young people in again? And they say they want change, but they don't want the change that the young pastor who they thought would bring it brings in.
I think you and I are both thinking about specific churches. Like you can see them scrolling through.
Oh, that's so true. They all scroll through. So what I've talked to pastors, I say then start a second service. And many churches do this. If there is a group of sheep, the Lord's sheep, the Lord's saints, who are older, and it's just they just say, I need to sing hymns, I need to wear my suit, and I think everyone else needs to too. When I worship, fine. Have a second service where you're free to do it differently. And there's people say, well, there's this guy Lehman out of 9 Marks who I think is just, I don't know why they even published the guy. He says some of the stupidest things. One of them was, you can't be a church and have 2 services. You have to be 2 churches. That's the stupidest thing in the world. It's so weak. What weak biblical gruel. I don't know why Mark Dever stands behind this guy as an author. I can see why he stands him as an elder, or even a good Christian. You don't have to agree on everything, but why write a book if that's the kind of drivel that comes out of your mouth? Why can't you? The first church, no doubt, it had 2,000 people, 3,000 people the first day. Do you think they all chatted the same time and they added their number daily, thousands of people, and they went house to house to teach them? Were they not the church in Jerusalem? Do you think they all met at once every day talking to 5 to 10,000 people? I'd say no. I'd say that knowing Jews who are very organized, there was at least 12 of them, said we don't have time to wait tables because we have to minister the word and pray, which they didn't mean like alone in their office. It meant we're divvying up these people and we're reaching them. And so you could have 2 services. I know there's a church in New Jersey, and I don't know the soundness of its doctrine. I don't know much about it. But when I was there pastoring, they had started an evening service for young people they called Liquid. And part of the reasons was their pastor, who wore a suit and looked old and pastoral, but he realized that the church needed to take some risks, but he let it go on like it was. But he started a second service that was culturally relevant, and now it's one of the biggest churches in New Jersey.
Oh wow!
And so now I'm not saying that they did everything right. I don't know. But the point is, if Harvest is going to grow, you can't hold out a loyalty to the time when Pastor Mike was here, or when Pastor Fred or Pastor Will was here. You can't hold to that as a thing. What do you do in this age, in this time, with these resources? That means shepherding is different. It's easier to shepherd a startup in one sense because you're telling the people what we're doing, and they're there because they're excited about what you're doing. And when you have to change, they're not always excited about what you're doing because they can't see. not because they're not good Christians. You're seeing something they're not seeing as a leader. And very often what stalls people is they look for complete consensus, and they can't get the people to buy in, so they don't do it. And that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing then is you got to invest in people constantly. One of the things we've learned at Harvest, and I think it's true, is you got to pay for buildings. There's no way around it. We're America. You have to meet somewhere, and so you gotta, and so I'm not anti-building. Some people say buildings aren't of the Lord. I wouldn't say that. They're tools, and they're necessary, and they need to be culturally fit with what's around you, right? So there may be a day where this building isn't culturally fit, conducive to what you're doing, and you'll have to change it or leave it. We've made it kind of plain. It could be a school. It's got a big kitchen. It's got what could be a small gymnasium, but you could add on. It has classrooms, and there are no markings except the cross and our own paraphernalia. You could take it down, change it into something else. I'm glad, because that way, if ever this doesn't work, you could sell it and move somewhere else. There's nothing sacred about the building. There are a lot of people who complain about buildings. They'll say, look at the great Notre Dame. It's a beautiful building that stands the test of time. No Christians build this stuff these days. That has no purchase with me. Mm-hmm. If in that day, it took them generations to build St. Peter's Basilica. Generations. People died before it was finished, and they worked on it constantly. And it's got the Sistine Chapel, and it's so glorifying to God. Yeah. Most of the churches, every city in France has a church. Every town in France is built around a church. Beautiful church. You can go in them today. They keep them. They're really nice historical artifacts that no one goes to.
What's happening inside?
No one goes to them.
I went to a church in England the one time, and it got turned into a club where they had raves. And I was like, whoa, there's a Bible metaphor here.
So it was beautiful, right? And that happens around us all the time. Mm-hmm. We have churches that turn into pubs and dentist office or accounting offices or homes. In a perfect world, you build a big, beautiful building and say, this is a monument where the architecture screams of the glory of God. But in a generation, it ain't there anymore. Or it's not that. There's a cathedral in Altoona. And to be a Catholic, you know that, I'm pretty sure it's a cathedral. They have different names for their different sizes. I had a Catholic cousin tell me that the reason why, and I love her, I'm not trying to shoot her down, this is just the truth. The reason why the funeral I did for my cousin's death wasn't a real religious service was because we did it outside and not in a Catholic church or basilica, or they have a cathedral in Altoona. Now, that means nothing to you, but if people live in Altoona, go in there. You could put 1,000 people in that cathedral, and I don't know what it's like now, but when I was living there in the 80s, a good 20 people would show up on a Sunday. It's just a building, and that's all a building is. I don't know how I got into buildings or money.
Should we move on? You ready to go to the next question?
I'll keep going on this one forever. There will not be a next question if you don't, because this is a very important question. Well, one more thing on it is reasonableness. There's a word called sophroneo in the Bible that means it's translated sensible or reasonable or something like that. Elders need to be reasonable people, and you have to be reasonable. Your elders have to be reasonable people, because when you're making these decisions, that's the thing. There's a wisdom, there's a sensibility, he's got a lot of common sense quality that your elders have to have, and they don't have to have it perfectly. They have to have it collectively, so that you can weigh things correctly. And you don't let the tail wag the dog. When I first got here, one of the big controversies was the kids ministry planned on having a Santa give out candy. And it blew up. Facebook was a new thing, or some social media was a new thing, and people were putting poems on there about how evil it is to put literal poems, how evil it is to have Santa in your church, and you can rearrange the letters and make him Satan, and you're substituting. And
you know what, you can rearrange the letters in mother-in-law too.
Into what?
Woman Hitler.
Woman Hitler. How about therapist? The rapist.
Oh, jeez.
Then you go to therapist. So So what's reasonable in
Not
that?
my mother-in-law.
That's right, not your mother-in-law. The rape, what's reasonable there? Well, people wanted out of fear, saying, let's just not do Santa because it's too much rigmarole. Even though we'd advertised it, we had a guy who's dressed up. He was going to come out, give out candy, and say, honor Jesus. Well, it was reasonable. And I knew at that time the reason this mattered wasn't about the Santa. It was about this is how we're going to make decisions on these things. Is it really that big a deal? No. A reasonable person would say you're getting silly.
Because you're going to leave church and go get pictures on Santa's lap anyway. At the
That's right. But there's some who will never teach Santa to their children, and there's some who do. Okay. Well, the ones who do, they're not teaching properly about Jesus. I don't know, but I think a reasonable person would say, I know lots of Christians who believed in Santa when they were little kids. Doesn't seem to get in the way. It seems they don't hate their parents. Say, you lied to me about the tooth fairy. No, they get it. That was fun. I was a kid. So the way I look, I never taught my kids about that Santa brought them things, but I did do tooth fairy. Why? Because I was spending a lot of money on gifts, and I didn't want Santa to get any credit at all, and that's really the truth. They say, Santa brought me this. Screw Santa. I'm working hard for this money, and you got that from me. And it led to one time when I was working in the drugstore company, I had a 4-year-old, Mandy, she was so cute, and I was walking her in, and one of the managers of the stores, I worked for the human resources, so he'd be a coworker, and he saw her and said, oh, it's Christmas time. What's Santa going to bring you? And she said, silly, Santa's dead, 4-year-old. Which technically wasn't what I taught her. I said there was a man named St. Nick. He's dead now and all that stuff. So what we did was I realized, and I convinced the people with me, if we blow this, we're going to always have to run in fear every time people come with their pitchforks and say, it's not that
establish a pattern.
It's not that we shouldn't listen and think it through. I mean, if he really is from Satan, I don't want him up there. But we reasoned it out together, and the reasoning went like this. If some of these kids are in homes that they're taught that Santa is real, us putting Santa up there isn't introducing the idea to them, and we're having Santa tell them Jesus is the reason for the season. So that's good for them. The others, their parents are telling them this is pretend. And each parent has already given them a strategy for how to, and most of them are like, don't tell your friends their parents are playing with them. Either way, it works. And it's not going to harm it wasn't even a Sunday morning. It was a Christmas event. It's not going to harm anyone to do it. Reasonable people would say yes, but you could lose people. Then we lose people. And we made that decision then. And
did those same people have an issue with like you dressing up as a pirate for VBS?
Well, by the way, those people didn't leave, as it turned out. Some of them left later over other things because you keep tweaking them, they leave. But it turned out they didn't leave, but they changed. And like I dressed up as Santa for the daycare last year. Nobody said a word. So, because everyone knows Santa's pretend. He's not real. And he's a nice guy. He's soft. It doesn't matter if you behave.
He says it does, but
he does. He gives you crap. He is a softie. So reasonableness has to be in there over rigid dogmatic fundamentalism. I hate legalism and fundamentalism. But anyway, go on.
It shows.
You want to see? You have almost no time left.
Yeah. How do we want to do this? Should we jump to the game?
It's your call.
Okay. So maybe I'll list out other questions that I had, and people can, if they want to hear them later, they can. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, while you're taking a break, remember to hit subscribe. If you're listening to us on Spotify, which is how I listen to or see these things, hit follow. Make sure you hit like if you can. If you can leave a comment, fine. If you can share it on another place, share it to Facebook or X, fine. Please do those things. Because these things, as Sunshine has properly educated me, help our algorithm so that we get more exposure so other people can listen. Also, I have another note on my desk. As you can see, I am just a puppet of the man. I don't even know who's writing. The tech team, literally, any of them could do this. It says, for avid listeners who want to send in a question, you may say, I don't know how to do that. Okay, we are so electronically connected that if you go to harvestpa.org, you can send in a question. You can find Will's.
It's actually in the podcast description. You'll find a link.
Keep going.
Where you can submit your questions.
So
either on Spotify or on YouTube, there's a link.
Okay, there's your best way. And in the other panoply, you can send emails. And you can fill out your Connect cards if you go to Harvest and turn them in and say, this is for the podcast.
Or you can comment on any of the episodes.
Now, that may take longer because I don't normally listen to the old episodes. So I just answered a comment today because I hadn't seen it. And I try to answer them. So that's the slowest way, comment, believe it or not. But we do like the comments. So yeah, any way you can. But I want to make sure I can say this. Where on the podcast is on YouTube, and it says
it's just in the description.
In the description, there's a link. All right.
So next
Commercial
question.
over.
This is going to lead into our game. The question is, you starting with the statement. You seem to be very connected in terms of staying up to date with news and things that are going on. Part of the question, and answer this part very briefly, would be, why do you think that's important? The follow-up that will lead into the game is, how do you stay up to date with, like, where do you get your information?
Okay, can be answered quickly. One, because a pastor can live in a silo and be isolated, and the people who come to church here aren't. And there are issues on their mind, questions on their mind that need addressed. Not because you have to be, we're led by the Word of God, but the Word of God is living and active, so it lives and acts in our culture, either to validate or correct. And if the pastor has no idea what's going on outside the walls of the church, there are questions that people are going to work and school and talking to family, that it'd be helpful to them if their pastor would address it from a biblical point of view. That's why it's important. Because I've always read books and newspapers to stay up, and nowadays, though, I have all over the net, and there's many sources, but also younger adults are a big help to me because they've been in my home, and now they're not, so I have to. And now they're not as young. They actually get behind. You're actually behind now.
Oh, I know.
So there are things 30-year-olds know that I don't know culturally. They go to apps and listen to voices that I've never heard of. And there's ones that 18-year-olds know. So I try to pay attention to what they're talking about within my own church and family. They tell me things, and then I think, that's interesting. I need to look into it. That's how I started listening to Joe Rogan. Back in the day, no old guys listened to Joe Rogan in their 50s, which I was, but the younger guys were. And I said, I got to check this guy out. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, I would say watch the 18 to 25-year-olds because they tend to be the market. Even, if you notice in the last election,
they're the demographic.
Yeah, that's who was getting targeted. You saw political stuff happening on TikTok rather than in the newspaper,
right?
Or yeah. So
that's exactly right.
Do you have any specifics or favorites of where you get some of your updates and info?
Well, for general political news, and all news is political these days, I go to biased sites, but I know they're biased. So I will go to Daily Wire, which I know Ben Shapiro and the boys, I know they're biased, and they're very friendly to Christians, and they like to focus on certain things. I go to a place called the Liberty Daily, which is to the point of vulgar in its bias, but it looks like the Drudge Report in that it gives you all these reports that are political, mostly, but then they link, and you go to those stories, and you go to different places. I also use there's a great site called Just the News, which is also conservative in its bias, but it's really good. As far as I look at the Christian Post, but that's Big Eva, right? So it's okay. I look at the Baptist Press. I look at Protestia and these very biased Christian ones. But as long as you know you're biased, it's okay. You can sort out the facts. I listen to podcasts on a regular basis, and I'll just read you what the ones I listen.
The Pour Over is a Christian news site that links
never
to
heard of
other
it.
places.
I want to see that. The Pour Over. I'll forget. So remind me of that. A big favorite of mine is John Anderson. Great guy. He used to be the Prime Minister of Australia, and that's not going to make him boring. Conversations with John Anderson, no commercials, and it's great conversations. He's a Christian, but he's also a bit of a philosopher, and he's also a statesman. I listen to Megyn Kelly. I like her a lot.
The briefing? Do you do the briefing with Al Mohler?
The briefing with Al Mohler every day when he's doing it. He's taking a break for a month or two now. Often listen to the Daily Wire's morning show, and also The World and Everything in its morning show. These are all podcasts. Megyn Kelly now has a morning news show. I like to listen a lot to the archives of Martin Lloyd-Jones. That's my favorite. I listen every week to something from him, and he's a preacher from like England, right? You say why? And he died in like, I don't know, 70, but he was a great preacher, and he preached to his day. Culturally, you can tell he's speaking to the culture. I heard, again, John MacArthur died, and it was said of him that he never preached to the culture, but he always preached to the culture. He says, you can use my sermons. He was always preaching to the culture, even though he says he didn't. And so does Martin Lloyd-Jones. And Martin Lloyd-Jones, I listen to him all the time, and it's good to look at the 60s and 70s, a biblical view, because he gives you history. One of my favorites is called Pick Up the Mic. That's on here too. Ruthless podcast I like for political insight from the center right. I like listening to Trigonometry, with these two British guys who are definitely moderate to liberal, but they just give great interviews. John Solomon Reports, again, that's from Just the News. Thinking in Public by Al Mohler, where he interviews guys. I used to listen to Tucker Carlson, but he became so weird in his anti-Semitism. He says he's not anti-Semitic, but he sounds that way to me, and I got sick of listening to him.
I expected a lot, but this is a vast list. I don't know how you keep up with all this.
I'm not done. Well, you don't listen to all of them every day.
I know, but
here's what you do: is you put them on double speed when you have to. And you can't put like Shapiro or Al Mohler on double speed because they talk too fast. But say I'm on my zero turn for hours when it's not raining so much, cutting the grass. You put these on 1.5 or double speed, you can knock out 4 or 5 of them in one lawn. The Andrew Klavan, I like him. Sometimes I listen to the Sean Ryan show. That's a big favorite of Will's. It's very long, so I pick and choose. I pick and choose my Joe Rogans. I don't want to listen to a bunch of comedians all the time. There's more. I like also Illicit Childers podcast. It's really good, and I'll listen to it. And you binge. Sometimes for weeks I'll catch up on someone. There's a great one, the Beckett Cook show. If you're struggling with your sexuality or not, he came out of the homosexual lifestyle. He is a great podcast. Too many commercials, but you can fast forward them. And Beckett Cook, it's just terrific. And sometimes I'll spend a week and I'll catch up, and then I won't listen to someone for a month, 2 months, and you just catch up on them. Lex Friedman once in a while.
Cool. That leads us into our game. So knowing that you are significantly aware of all these things, and I am so not up to date with stuff like this, my goal was, can I find a current event topic that you're unaware of?
Easy. Easy.
So,
just ask me about pop music.
I have a list of topics, and what I'm going to do is, you've got 30 seconds or less. I'm going to list the topic, and whether you know what this thing is or not, you've got to pretend like you know the news event. Okay,
got it.
So I was going to start with one you've already addressed twice, and it's John MacArthur. What's the current event on Johnny Mac in 10 seconds?
Well, he died, and a lot of people are lionizing him, making him the greatest thing there ever was, and I guess he deserves a lot of that. There's a few people ripping him, though, and they're getting killed for ripping him online. If you say anything negative, you are anathema.
Okay, yep. I say yep, like, yeah. Chip and Joanna Gaines?
Yeah, it turns out they kind of fake like they were evangelical, but they really like gay people, so they got a couple gay. Well, I like gay people too, but they're actually promoting these two guys and their 2 kids on their Pioneer Family show as normal, and now the Christian world seems betrayed. I don't know why. I never thought they were Christians. They didn't, but they definitely marketed to the evangelicals. But evangelicals, we can be suckers.
Yeah.
They market to us. We think they're Christians. They were never Christians,
All right,
and they're showing it.
Time's up. Trump's view on the Epstein files.
He's stirring things up. He's saying, and this is 3 weeks old now, but right now he just came out today saying it's a hoax, and anyone who doesn't believe it's a hoax isn't on my team. And there's a lot of people saying, well, I'm on your team, and I don't think it's a hoax, and people are fighting over it.
All right, slightly deeper dive. Let's go with Sister Raffaella Petrini.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Oh, she's... I was going to make somebody smile. I was so ready. I have no idea. I was going to tell her. Something came to my mind right away, and as soon as I looked at you, you were smiling. And I smiled. I was like, I can't do it. She's the Catholic girl who said she saw a miracle in South America, and everyone's running there. But I don't know who she is.
So close. The first female... she's the president of the Catholic Governorate, the first female governor or something.
Way.
Yeah,
I need to look into
Vatican City.
No way.
Your heritage there. Elmo.
Well,
do you know this one, Sunshine?
No, I know he's on the...
What happened this week with Elmo?
Actually, I don't know. But I do know he's on the sign down in Katanning.
I noticed that.
And
we're going to have to cancel him.
Sesame Street is... was he gay, right?
Well, worse than that, someone hacked his X account and started posting very anti-Semitic comments, like literally kill the Jews from Elmo's Twitter /X.
I'm not shocked. Elmo is a leftist, and those leftists tend to hate Israel, and so Elmo needs to die. I'm a good guy. You're the devil, Elmo.
There are rumors that it was a hacking, but who knows? It could have been Elmo's real feelings.
Big Bird got in there and says, I'm too nice to say it myself.
All right, what about in Southern California, the illegal Mexican immigrant being trying to be detained by ICE? Do you know about this week? This is probably going to be something bigger than it is right now.
There are a lot of them.
You talked about one a couple of weeks ago.
He climbed up on a roof during a raid and fell and died.
Oh yeah, I heard about that guy.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
It's going to start some.
Yeah, but it shouldn't. That was actually. I think they were.
They weren't even actively pursuing him.
Yes, they were invading. There's all these activists that are attacking them, that are being paid to attack them. They actually went into a pot farm there. I think that's where this guy died. There was a pot farm where there's all these illegals, including underage illegals without parents, who are doing slave labor there, and they went to bust them. And all these activists show up, and they're paid to be there. And one of them got himself killed. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Expect cars to be set on fire by the mostly peaceful protests.
Mostly peaceful protests, yeah.
What about the boy in Thailand found with a pack of dogs? You know anything about that? This is, again, a deep dive.
Well, yeah, everyone's heard of that one.
I don't know how to be specific enough to. He was abandoned in a slum. It's kind of sad.
Mowgli. That's all I need to know.
It does sound like that. He was he essentially raised by a pack of dogs, and when he was picked up, or some organization tried to put him in a school, he would bark and growl at them.
How
because,
awesome is that? I feel bad.
Unfortunately, he was abandoned by his family, and that's what caused it.
I feel bad for him. But that is the story of Jungle Book.
Yeah,
he was raised by wolves.
It's a little bit prettier in Jungle Book. What about? I think maybe we'll stop.
Who gives
there.
him the diaper? Now give me another one. Come on. If you have it, tell it.
I have one more. I think it's about the data leak from a company called Near Intelligence in Singapore.
No, that's a good one. What happened?
I don't remember all the details, but they got hacked, and oh man, I should have put more notes on this. Look up Near Intelligence Singapore data leak.
I will.
They something to do with the Epstein files, and now I can't even remember.
Well, let me end on this then, because you said something about when someone dies, you hear their voice. Well, you can end in, but you're going to hear that person talk to you now, because with AI, you can take a photograph, and they'll animate it.
Yeah, that's
right. They don't know the voice, but they can make the person walk and talk and do anything they want.
Last I checked, it was like a 6 or 7 second voice clip. Your voice can be totally recreated.
So just think about how much digital information they have on every one of us. And by they, I mean, it could be your family. It could be a service saying, we'll make a video of your grandma saying goodbye. And she'll come alive and say goodbye or whatever you want her to say.
Creepy.
I mean, it's going to be creepy. It is creepy. Everything's creepy. Yeah, to have an old photograph will be weird, because everyone instead will have to open up their hologram and people will walk. There was me walking for the first time, all from a picture. And so,
So let me just read off some of these questions that I was going to ask you in case anyone's interested in the future. What/who were some significant influences in your life? Don't answer any of these yet, or until they're asked.
I won't. I'm out of time. Sunshine
One of my
told me.
favorite interview questions: something that makes you happy every single time you do it, and it reveals something about your character. Your favorite personal, as in dealing with yourself, character flaw or weakness. Do you love your grandchildren more than your kids because you got them tattooed onto your arm? What you hope to accomplish at Harvest. Some of your greatest rewards and some challenges of being here at Harvest, and your final challenge to Harvest Church if you were to drop dead tomorrow. Oh, also, bonus question from the ladies in the office. They want to know your story on jury duty. How you feel about jury duty. Do you know
funny.
what that's a reference to?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
See, now they're busting my chops, and it makes me love them more. I want you to know I feel endeared to them right now. So this is why, by the way, my sneaky, he told me he's going to ask me all these questions, Sunshine. So I said we'll do the Bible first. That way he won't have time to get them all in.
It's tricky.
And I've avoided the spotlight. Okay, we're out of here.
Thanks.